Hello, welcome to the Reasonably Effective podcast brought to you by myself, Uncommon Fossil, and 10 Types.
Yep, hello. And just want to say before we started recording, Uncommon Fossil hung up on me instead of starting the recording. So yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that's not a sign of things to come, but a little maybe a little saltiness, a little animosity can be good for the content too, right? So it's all good, right?
Yeah, I guess
Um,
so.
so we're recording a couple days after Worlds finished, and we have on Limitless, I believe, all of the deck lists that we're going to get. So there are 127 lists, and I believe these are all. My understanding is these are all the players that made day two. So we have the lit all the what they so we know what they played. We have a breakdown of types. There are 16 archetypes amongst these 127 lists, and we're going to just talk about some of the lists, but partly largely at the archetype level, but get into some of the cards too, I imagine. And I think starting things off, we're just going to dive right into the winning deck because the winner does deserve to start things off with Iron Thorns. Unless is there anything else introductory you want to say?
Uh, no, I will say Iron Thorns was not the most played deck. It was the fifth most played deck with 10 people making day two with it, which is still
Right.
like pretty high up, but then it did do very well, I think, on day two.
Yeah, we don't have the data for how many decks were brought to day one. So we don't know conversion rates day one to day two. Um, Iron Thorns day two share was like almost 8% of the meta. I guessing there weren't 8% of the players there with Iron Thorns, but don't know. Maybe it was. It was certainly obviously a very good call, very matchup dependent deck. We both played Iron Thorns on the ladder. I think we both think whether it's the most exciting deck to play or play against that we can is up for debate. But we do. I find it to be a pretty
I
effective
feel like
deck, and I
that's not up for debate. I feel like it's not that exciting, but yeah, no, it's a
well
very good
well
ladder.
if you watch the final and you're a big fan of coin flips, you got to see a lot of dice rolled, and that's really what you want, right? And you got Crushing Hammers and Pokemon Catcher in this deck. You had the Pokemon Catcher in the other deck, and I guess, look, that's not good Pokemon, right? That's not good.
I think it's hype. It's pretty hype.
I think. I mean, I hate hammers. I've hated hammers forever. I have take at times when hammers have been the right call for decks, I avoided them just because I don't enjoy playing them, nor do enjoy being at the receiving end. But look, I understand it's good into the deck, and Iron Thorns, it's a good deck. Obviously, it shuts down abilities on all rule box Pokemon. So besides the EXVs and the Radiant Pokemon, very good. It's got an okay attack. Right, does 140 for 3 energy. You move an energy to a bench Pokemon, and that's I think where the skill is in this deck, right? Because to a certain extent, can be seen as a lower skill level deck. I think it's less critical decision makers over the course of a game. But honestly, I respect that. I think if you play a deck that you make like 20 or 30 key decisions over the course of a game, you're going to almost regularly, in most games, probably make a mistake or two. If you have to play like 5 or 10 key decisions over the course of the game, the odds of making the misplay are a lot less. And I think that's part of your deck choice, knowing that. And so I don't take issue with that. I don't know if you're of the same view of that. I know you've criticized me in the past when I was playing Eternatus VMAX that it was a dumb deck. It was a low level skill level deck to play. But I think right, or whether that statement's right or not, I think it's a legitimate. It's actually a good decision making thing with the deck choice of just knowing what you're going to have to do to navigate successfully with the tournament.
Yeah, I think like people. I made a comment in a video. It's like Pokemon's like not. It's hard. It's hard to play, and people are like, it's
Yes,
not that hard to play. But people are at the best. Like these are the best players in the world generally, and I mean it's the World Championships, and they're making mistakes. And the decks that are winning are the decks that are. It's not like this deck's super easy to play. There aren't like difficult decisions, but there are decisions like there aren't as many. Like you just don't. I mean, you have a bunch of four-ofs, so there are less
right.
decisions to be made, and that's a good thing. An easier deck is better. Obviously, if you have a deck where you have lots of hard decisions, but the if you make the right ones, you can like be in a very good position. That's good. But then you also need to those decisions are going to depend on the meta a lot as well. And the meta was not what I was expecting. I don't think what other people are expecting. Not that's like entirely out there. In day two, I don't think there are any crazy decks that were like people would describe as not meta. Yeah, I'm just quickly scrolling through, and I'd say they are all like meta decks, but also um, it's not like a lot of people are expecting Charizard and Gardevoir to be very good, and it just wasn't. For I mean, it wasn't terrible. I think Gardevoir came second in seniors, um, and I don't know. I mean, it's not like Charizard and Gardevoir are bad, but they're not to the level of these other decks here either.
Yeah, for performance. I imagine. Yeah, we'll talk about Gardevoir. I don't know that it had a good day two conversion rate from day one to day two. Probably, um, it's only played slightly more on day two than it actually played less than Iron Thorns on day two, which I can't imagine it. That was the case going into day one. Look, I just want to talk about this decision making in the deck. Obviously, you're flipping a lot of coins, so that is what it is. The tricky part with Iron Thorns to me is first off, you play 4 Iron Thorns. You will take a lot of mulligans, and that just is what it is. More randomness again with the deck. But you play those 4 Iron Thorns, and you'll have 2 Pokemon search cards in Techno Radar, which I think is a great card. You discard a card from hand, search for any 2 future Pokemon. Awesome, but only 2 search cards for Pokemon. So you are vulnerable to only getting 1 Iron Thorns in play, and then by turn 2 or turn 3, not getting another in play and just losing the game because of that. That definitely happens, and it's a risk you run. But the other thing is tying into that is when do you bench an Iron Thorns or not is a big deal because you have to move energy to the bench, and it's that energy cycling. When do you want to move energy? When do you not? And when do you want to penny out your damaged Pokemon? When do you either take the chance that you might get knocked out, or when is it, just like, hey, it's okay if I get knocked out on this occasion. So it's that energy cycling, multiple number of Iron Thorns in play. To me, that's one of the critical skills, which I think, just comes from experience with the deck.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think it's as big of a deal as you like think it is, but anyway, it is like a very important thing, and you can get like Pokemon stuck in it. It can be pretty weird. One thing I do want to talk about with this list is there's like
Yeah.
a lot of gust. There's normally a lot of gust in the deck. It usually is like 4 bosses orders, but then which is the 4 Pokemon catchers and then the Prime catcher as well. So
Yes.
Legacy Energy or Unfair Stamp. I don't know what the most common ace spec is. I'm actually going to pull up the deck here. So 4 people played Legacy Energy on day two. It looks like.
Hmm.
And then 5 played Prime Catcher and 1 person played Dangerous Laser. What? Okay, 1 person apparently
Wait.
played.
What's that one do again? I keep
It's
forgetting.
the burn and confuse. I guess it helped fix some of the math. Um,
Oh, to get some knockouts, huh?
it's not like they were. Admittedly, I said all the like Iron Thorns did really well. This person did finish second to last. It's not like finishing second to last on day two is bad. That's good. But
No.
also, I don't know. Dangerous Laser seems kind of sketchy. Like it's not the best card in my opinion. I feel like that's not a hot take. But that's not what I was expecting when I opened the ace specs.
That wasn't the ace spec you thought they were going to play. Yeah, I would agree. Um, and let's in the list here that they do play Giovanni's Charisma. I think that's the only of the decks that played that copy of that, which it does 2 things. And I like it in the deck, and I know there's been discussion I've seen whether it's good or not, or whether there's the other supporter that puts the energy on top of the deck, which I'm blanking on the name of that one.
Oh,
Um,
teams no Team Starground or something.
Yeah, that might be it, something like that.
Yeah.
It goes from the active to the top of the deck, in which case they're top decking just the same energy. They're guaranteed to get it in hand, but they don't draw another card. Whereas here, your opponent puts an energy attached to their active Pokemon in their hand. If you do, you put an energy on your active Pokemon. And sometimes that energy acceleration is important. And of course, you are trying to disrupt energies. And if you hit some hammers, then they can, just making them have to get 2 attachments on a turn, which they can't do. So, just trying to slow them down with the attack. So I like that the Giovanni's Charisma in the deck. That's the one thing that they did that no one else did. There probably something else as well, but I think that was a good include myself. And the other card to mention that makes I think that there was a big plus to Iron Thorns coming into this tournament because Iron Thorns was not played a lot before this. I think there were 3 Iron Thorns players listed on Limitless at NAIC, and that's about it. So it hadn't been a deck that was really seeing any play. But Culver's Tenacity, I think, is big for the deck. The supporter, you search your deck for a stadium and an energy card, and so it is a way once you have that guaranteed access to double turbo because the deck list does play 1 energy lotto, but that is very much a risk of what you're going to get. You have very little control over that.
Yeah. And what's the closest Tenacity? That card always scares me. Especially we'll talk about Regidraco V-Star, and that did it did pretty well. in terms of play, it was played a ton and it did
Yeah.
well. I think it had like a good it conferred a lot to day two versus I assume Charizard and Gardevoir played a lot day one and they didn't do so well. But Regidrago V-Star plays Kyurem, and you could put Kyurem in other decks, and Kyurem is just really bad for this because it's a good attacker. If Colossus Tenacity is in play, it's just really difficult to. It's not like super difficult to deal with, but it's not great. This is like there are worse decks to get Kyurem to buy, but it does 110 to essentially all your Pokemon because you only have three, or you only have four.
Right.
So theoretically, you could have all four in play, and it doesn't happen to all of them. But that's super weird, and almost definitely not going to happen. So essentially, just doing 110 to all your Pokemon, and that's awkward.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, obviously, with the Regidrago, it's designed to Regidrago V Star designed to copy it with the Regidrago V Star Kyurem's attack. Obviously, if they can, it is a basic the Kyurem, and if they do have the colorless tenacity in this Scarpal, they can attack with that. But then do you one shot it or not? I don't remember the HP on
But
that
does who one
offhand.
shot? Does
Does
Iron
Iron
Thorns
Thorns one shot?
Kyurem? Yeah, I believe
Probably.
it does. Assuming you have so it has 130 HP. So if you have either three lightnings or a double turbo and a future booster energy capsule, so there's a good chance you'll one
Okay.
shotting him. But then they could just recover it and like play it down again. And then like if they attack twice, you probably lose the game. So
Yeah.
maybe
I
not,
mean,
but it's pretty difficult.
yeah, look, I don't think outside of Regidrago, though, I doubt anybody brought Kiram to the tournament, right? I'm not sure. I
Yeah, I
didn't
don't
take a
know. I
look at
mean,
that.
the so what is it? So Kyurem is so Richie Rico was played there were what percent of the time? It was only over a quarter of the meta, which is a lot. Yeah, I can't see. Yeah, it looks like it was only played in Reggie Draco, but you could
Right.
put it in other decks, and it might start being played in other decks. There wasn't really like any lost zone. I think there's like one lost zone. Maybe there's more than one. No, there's one lost zone. So
Yeah, just one Lost Zone player that made day two. So I thought it. I mean, Lost Zone's a good deck. I'm a little surprised that it didn't do a little better, but it is. There are a lot of tough matchups now too. Um, so anything else you want to say about Iron Thorns?
not double canceling clones kind of interesting. I think
Hmm.
that's pretty common. Yeah, it looks like it was pretty common in the deck because Mimikyu and also other things, but I guess mostly Mimikyu. There could be some things I'm not thinking of, but
Right.
I mean, most of the abilities you're turning off with Iron Thorn TX anyways, but or at least most of the good ones. But Mimikyu is an issue, and if your opponent plays a few copies of that, if they play one, that's pretty. I feel like common in like Gardevoir,
Yeah.
and potentially in other decks, and that's a big issue. But you kind of lost zone it with Lost City as well.
Right. So they're playing Lost City for the stadium. I think that's probably what they all play. I'm not sure. Um, some lists play TM Devolution. They don't here. Just the TM Evolution, TM. Sorry, Turbo Energize, which is very good in the deck. And yeah, and it's a quads Pokegear deck because there's no engine, so it's a lot of four ofs and then four of Pokegear hoping to get you the cards you need on your turn. That's kind of the way the deck rolls. I would probably prefer the Legacy Energy over Prime Catcher, but for it one world. So what am I to say? If I was just doing it for the ladder in general, I'd like having that make your opponent take a fourth knockout, right? So three knockouts doesn't win with Legacy Energy. They need four. It does make the whole decision making with the energy even a little bit trickier, right? Because when do you move it? When do you let yourself get knocked out with it, and all that? But that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Legacy Energy getting knocked out with Legacy Energy is never bad. I mean, you'd rather not be knocked out, but if you are getting knocked out, Legacy Energy on the Pokemon is good. So if you have like the option to get knocked out with or without it, you always want to get knocked out with it. It just depends on your points like situation. But Prime Catcher again is leaning into the idea the deck's more consistent, and it's adding another
Yeah.
Gust card that is searchable off of Arven as well. I mean, Pokemon Catcher is searchable off of Arven, but that's not consistent.
Right. So yeah. So look, I mean, Prime Catcher makes sense in the deck. Obviously, they only play one penny in this list, and I think most lists are playing two. I typically play two, but obviously, people are cutting it thin. I mean, depending on the way you want to play the deck, penny can be very key to the win strategy. And there is no pal pad, so you're not recovering any supporters. Even though you're probably playing a long game, at least some of the time with a deck like this.
Yeah, but you have supporters to like play every turn anyways. You have judges and
Yeah.
I did the winning list. I assume that played judge, and it played okay. It does have 9, but it does play 3 judge and
Yeah.
Oh, I guess yeah. And then you have like just search supporters and gusting supporters you can play a lot. And so I feel like you're not going to have that much time to penny. I feel like you only play one penny through the course of the game.
Okay.
You might be able to, playing two increases your odds of hitting. You're not playing for boss orders in the game. That's just probably, that doesn't seem like it's likely. It could happen, but very unlikely. But
Yeah.
yeah, so like the second penny's there for consistency, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. So I mean, look, the worst part to me with Iron Thorns winning is what's the amount of Iron Thorns we're going to see on the rank ladder in live, right? That's obvious. That it's not the most fun deck to play against.
Yeah, but
Um,
if you're playing, you can play decks that just beat it. Like in the juniors finals, it was Iron Thorns EX, which it does prove like I mean, obviously it's good because it won, but it also was in the juniors finals, which the juniors and seniors divisions are if you don't know, they're younger divisions, and
mhm.
they are generally players in masters are better. It's not like everyone in masters is better than everyone in juniors or seniors or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, no, they're still like very good players in those divisions, and Roaring Moon single prize, I guess Ancient Box beat Iron Thorn CX, so that deck should if you're playing, there are lots of decks that can beat Iron Thorns easily as well. It's a very matchup dependent deck. The decks that can beat it easily aren't the best decks. You're probably going to lose to a lot of other things, but
Right.
yeah,
I mean, part of they won the event, and one of the things it likes to go against is Lugia, right? Because Lugia is weak to them, and if they can't set up, it's just it's a pretty much a hard loss. But there wasn't a ton of Lugia there, so oh no, there was. I take it back. There was more than I
oh
thought.
oh yeah, there's a bunch. It just didn't do
Yeah,
so well because I kept playing against Iron Thorns because Iron Thorns
yeah,
is good. Like if you look at all the decks, so Rich Draco was the most played deck that doesn't like it can beat Iron Thorns, but it does have issues you need to I mean you have your it's an inconsistent deck generally, and you are using your
yeah,
restart power and you can still miss, and you're using your Ogre Ponds, you can still miss, and Squawk abilities and you can still miss. But when those are turned
yeah,
off, it's really sketchy. Charizard is really bad against it. Raging Bull Ogre Pond is also pretty bad against it. Gardevoir
yeah.
is okay against it. It depends though. It just depends how things
Well,
go, because you need to use your Flood Amazing Clef keys, and then and potentially Mimikyu as well, but not and how list don't necessarily play that, but then yeah, and then you can like look down further, and pretty much all the decks do rely on abilities. So the only deck that doesn't is Ancient Box, and I guess sorry, not abilities, but rule box abilities specifically. Dragon Ball
right.
doesn't, and Lost Zone doesn't, I guess.
Right, but right, obviously the vast majority do. And the other thing, and maybe it's the transition to the next deck, but if you look at the top three decks, if you're looking for something, if this is what people are playing based on, the top three decks are all basic decks and all big basic decks. So if you if you do a walling basic strategy, then that may be a good play right now on the ladder.
Yep. Um, and if you're playing Draco Restart, the fourth deck here, put in Noivern. I don't think they played Noivern much. I'm trying to see how much they played it. Maybe they did. No. Um, no,
All
none
right.
of them played Noivern. What?
So what do you want? I think we should pick a deck to talk about.
Yeah, no, let's just go down the list. But yeah, no, just checking in. None of them played Noivern, which seems
That's
bold. But yeah, so next up, the second place deck was Roaring Moon EX. And
yes.
this list is pretty interesting, I guess. I'm not usually a big Roaring Moon fan, but it's not like I don't like the deck. It's just I don't know, not my favorite, but it's not bad, and I mean it's very good. Roaring Moon EX can just knock out everything, but you have two attacks. Frenzy Gouging does an instant knockout, but it does 200 to yourself for 3 NG. Otherwise, you can do 100 or 220 if there's a stadium.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things about this is the new card, which is Pekaron EX, which says you can essentially just switch anytime you want. And that's really cool. It also has an attack that does 60 for each prize your opponent's taken, which is okay. I said you can switch whenever. You can't switch Pekaron into the active, only Darkness Pokemon. And then that's a pretty interesting card because of course you have First Assault's Vitality, but you have Dark Patch, which is very important and only accelerates to the
Yeah.
bench. So this is a really nice upgrade, allowing you to have Dark Patch active almost all the time.
Yeah, look, I like Roaring Moon EX more than you. I liked it before rotation, right? I thought it was a pretty strong deck when we had the Galarian Moltres V, so that it could really you could set it up pretty well. on your second turn. At this point, since you need the 3 energies to attack with the EX, he plays one copy of the single prize, which only takes 2 energies. There's another player. There are only 2 people that made day 2 with Roaring Moon, so didn't see a lot of play. But 2 players got in. One came in second, so very good there. It's harder to attack your first turn going second, I would think, with the Roaring Moon EX, just since you need the 3 energies. You
Then
have the
what?
Dark Patch. Then it's just not a. I'm not sure how consistently you can attack your first turn going second with the deck. Is my point. It's a
Yeah.
big basic deck. You want to attack for turn one, generally in those type of decks, but you need to get 3 energies, which means you need to hit a Dark Patch, Side of Vitality, attach, and switch. The switch, of course, like you said, has now become a lot easier because Pekka gives you essentially the free switch that you need. So I do like with the deck.
Yeah, and of course, relying on that does mean that you are vulnerable to Iron Thorns EX, as we did see as it lost. But
Yeah.
so that's something you like. There are no switch cards outside of the Pekron EX, and there are 2 copies. Also, no Assyrian Heavy Ball, which is kind of interesting. They just opted to play a bunch of like 2 copies of Squawkabilly EX and Pekron EX, which isn't like crazy to play. But then they're not running Assyrian Heavy Ball, which is pretty cool.
Right. The other list, they played the heavy ball, and they have just the one Pekka the one Squawkabilly. So, what's better? Because you can only play the one copyrighted Greninja. So if you need that, you have the heavy ball for that. And the winning list still just played the one Fezandipiti, which I assume is really important as the game goes on. Because once again, this is a deck without an engine like Iron Thorns. Here you do have Fezandipiti to, assuming you don't get knocked out, you're usually good to go the next turn. If you do get knocked out, you draw 3 cards, and it's pretty good, decent drawing three extra cards plus your card for turn. So that's a 4th card. And then you can play whatever cards you have in hand.
Yeah. And so I don't think there's too much to say about the deck. I mean, there's like Single Prize Roaring Moon, which is like kind of fun. I know that's a pretty popular Pokemon, but it's Pokestop, Quad Pokestop, and Quad Pokemon Catcher. So Pokemon Catcher, 4 copies in each of the top 2 decks. Is it the best card in the game?
Yeah.
Looks like it is. So
I
in
know
the
four.
top deck, was there something
Go
that was
ahead.
played in 4 copies of?
Any other deck, you mean?
Or no, the top 2 deck. Were there any other cards that were played in 4 of in each? No, it looks like there wasn't. So yeah, so
yeah.
that you heard it here. Pokemon Catcher, best card in the game.
Yes, and as I look at the 4 Pokestops, I kind of get just a bad feeling, right? Because Pokestop, it can be a very cruel card. So obviously, for any tournament, you need things to go your way. So I imagine Pokestop went reasonably well for them. Of course, when you have a deck with the Pokestop, you're built for it. When you're playing a non-Pokestop deck and you have those desperation Pokestops, it very rarely, at least for me, turns out well. Usually, it's those cards I need. I just discard and lose for the rest of the game.
I mean, also they do have their Pal Pad to recover the supporters, but then there's Night Stretch to recover Pokemon. But then that's also why 2 of a Pokemon could be really nice, so that if you discard it, it's like whatever, you have another one. And bad Pokestops. I mean, there's 4 Roaring Moon EXs. You're not going to discard all your Roaring Moon EXs off of a Pokestop. That's not even possible on one Pokestop. But so
Right.
I feel like that it's well, it is. Pokestop can be viewed as a risky card, and it is. Playing like 2 copies of stuff really helps smooth things out there.
Yeah, the other player that played Roaring Moon that made it day 2, they played 3 Night Stretcher, so trying to partly because of the Pokestop and just trying to get Pokemon back in play. So that's a bit interesting. I think 3 is pretty high. I would probably opt for 2 myself.
Yeah, but then you were just saying like you got scared of Pokestop. So I think they were scared of Pokestop, and they're like, no, I'm gonna do I'm gonna put in lots of Pokestops so I don't get messed up by bad Pokestops. Or no, lots of
recovery cards, right? Yeah, put in lots of item recovery cards to get back the cards. The other cards I just discarded, but right, then you're not. No, I get it. It's a tricky thing there. Prime Catcher in this one, unfair stamp in the other person's list. So, but hey, the deck did very well. Iron Thorns I thought was a solid pick. I would have said coming into the tournament. I didn't think it would I didn't expect it to win. Certainly, I didn't think it would be played in the high numbers that it showed up. But I thought it was a good pick, and it's a relatively it's not the most complicated deck if you want to switch to a new deck. Thought that made it a little more popular too. Roaring Moon, though, I didn't really see this one coming. That one was a big surprise to me.
Yeah, me too. I think I had my top 10. Iron Thorns was um and it was like sixth for me. I don't think Roaring Moon was
Hmm.
on the list. It wasn't even on the honorable mentions. I think I kind of just like didn't think about it. Maybe it was somewhere there. But yeah, I mean it's good. I always it gets like overshadowed by Raging Bull Ogre Pond and Miraidon is kind of like in between those two, but it finished higher than them. But that moves us nicely into Miraidon, which finished third. Um,
Yes.
Miraidon here, it's a big basic deck here. Iron Hands EX and Miraidon EX, which are both like main attackers. And you mentioned this, it doesn't play Knight Academy, right?
Yeah, which I was very surprised by. And I watched some of the stream over the weekend. I imagine you did too. And Wasi talked a lot about how great was Academy at Night, I believe.
I
Is
think
that the
it's
right
Knight
name for?
Academy. Oh no, it is Academy at Night. Okay.
I think it was one of those cards that was probably initially the original translations we saw on places was reverse, and then Pokemon, they always do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So and I believe I looked at all the lists. I believe every other list played at least one copy of Academy at Night. Um, and I do think it's good in the deck. Just the odds looking to increase. You, the deck plays what this list played 16 basic energies, which I guess 15 was probably the most common number, but but whatever, a lot of basic energies because you need it for generator. So you have energy in hand, and most of the time, if you can put one on top of your deck with Academy at Night, you're really putting yourself, I think, into a much. You've increased the odds significantly of getting those two energies with the generator. And like with this deck, you need to hit two energies a lot, right? If you're only hitting one, then you can attack with Raikou that turn, right? But usually you want to attack with Miraidon and Iron Hands with the way this deck is built, or maybe even Blood Moon or Ursaluna, which you might need to get some energy onto it. Although no, you can't do it with generation. I take
Yeah,
that
no, I was
back.
to say you can't.
You can attach a double turbo,
Yeah.
obviously.
Um, and so I mean, it's a big basic deck. I feel like this is kind of the definition of a big basic deck. Roaring
Yes.
Moonyax is a big basic deck, but if you use the big one-shotting attack, then it's not so big because then you have 30 HP. So this is just leaning into the high HP. You can get a 310 HP basic with Blood Rush Luna EX with Bravery Charm, and yeah, I mean, just a solid deck. There are a bunch of different Pokemon as well, which is pretty cool to see. I mean, this is generally how the deck looks, but it's not like the other decks where, I mean, Roaring Moon, yes, there's some Pokemon diversity. There's literally no Pokemon diversity in the Iron Thorns EX deck, but there's a bunch of
Right.
different Pokemon. There are, I don't know, there's a bunch. And then in the different lists, there's even more. But yeah, we see stuff like Iron Bundle and Lumineon V's, Fezandipity EX, Zapdos, and just a bunch of different things that are useful in different situations, which are really cool. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's not my favorite deck to play. I think it's kind of, I don't know. I don't love it. It's not bad. I will say I was rooting when I saw the top eight. I was rooting for Iron Thorns EX because it's like a ladder legend deck, right? But yeah, no, this is is definitely a deck I'm going to play some, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
Look, I was rooting for Miraidon to bring it home. I will say once Jesse got going. It's kind. It's a. I think it's a more interesting. And I certainly. Well, I didn't think Roaring Moon wasn't. I wasn't giving that a thought till pretty late on. Anyway, I didn't think that was going to do anything. I got to say, guilty there. The Miraidon deck is kind of either a box style deck or it's almost an Iron Hands deck, right? The Miraidon's there in large. You do attack with it. And I think the attack is very important because it for most of the game it is your biggest damage output at 220. Um, but 220 is good, but is it good enough? You also generally need to get some attacks with Iron Hands, right? You only play two Miraidons EXs in a sense, which is low for that to be just a deck that is quote a Miraidon deck, I'll say. But that's the way it's running these days for
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
if you play a few attack choices with Miraidon and then with Blood Mirror, so then the EX at the end, then that's your attackers for the game. But Raikou V is also kind of similar to Miraidon. It's cheaper, but probably doing
Hmm.
less damage. On Hands EX is very important, but it does depend on the matchup. If you're up against you can attack back-to-back turns, but if you're up against something like Iron Thorns EX, like then you shouldn't Iron Hands. You just want to Zapdos and one-shot them. Or no, I mean, no, Rhydon plays Zapdos, one-shot them, and so yeah, Raikou V also pretty terrible that matchup because it's barely doing any damage. Um, But then you also see, I didn't really mention this earlier. We didn't talk about this with, I guess it's true with Iron Hands EX and with Rhydon EX, and then Iron Thorns EX, is that Pokemon like Squawkabilly EX and Lumineon V, as well as Radiant Greninja and Iron Bundle, are weak to Lightning. So then it doesn't really matter for the single prizes, but for Squawkabilly EX and Lumineon V, you can either amp you very much for 3 prizes or just
Right.
knock him out relatively easily with any Lightning Pokemon.
Right, but Iron Hands, it's great against all these stage 2 EX decks, right? Because you have these basics or stage 1s that you can take out at some point in the game to steal 2 prizes. And then, yes, most decks, if they don't play that, the odds are they play a Lumineon V, a Squawkabilly, or some low HP basics, right? So Iron Hands can take multi prizes in most decks. I guess, you're how do you fare, I guess, against a deck like Raging Bolts. I guess that's a little different there. Some of the decks play, which the top list didn't, that came in third, played the Raichu V, which that lets you hit for big damage, which I kind of like that as an option in the deck potentially. That's the one that lets you one shot like a V Star or an Evolution
EX.
EX. Otherwise, you can't do that.
Yeah, I think so Raichu V, you just card a bunch of energy, and so then you need to be able to get a lot of energy in play. You can get some in play, but with Electric Generator, it's not super consistent. So I guess the list running Raichu V were then also the list running Knight Academy, so that you're probably a little bit slower because you need to like Knight Academy, which takes some setup and stuff like that. But once you're getting going with that, you're hitting more damage. So yeah, it's more like it's slower, I guess, with Knight Academy. Like Town Store is really good turn 1 to get Force Heal Stone, and it can be used for other things, but it's really good for that.
Right, you have the 2V Pokemon. You get one of them to play early on, and you're good to go. Two of the cards I want to mention. One which I don't love to play, and I like Miraidon. I think I've played it more than you. Is the Zapdos, which I often don't play in the deck, but I think it was a very big call. I think basically every list might have played no, not every deck played it, but your basic Lightning Pokemon do 10 more except for Zapdos. First, it does give you, it's the only attacker that they can do to take out like a Mimikyu, for
Well, you
one
could
thing.
Mew EX, but that's kind of
You do,
awkward. Um,
right, because back in the days when Flaffy was in format, you could accelerate to Mew EX, right? But now Generator does not accelerate to Mew, so it's 3 attachments. You do play double turbo, so you
yeah,
can
it could
get it
double
set up
turbo,
over two
and that doesn't
turns.
really impact things much in terms of damage output. I mean, it doesn't change the damage output of Mimikyu, but yeah, Zapdos is what
Right.
you want to be looking towards.
But the big reason Zapdos is here, though, I think, is so when you're attacking, part of it a lot when I play it, you're attacking Miraidon early game, because to pull off an Iron Hands with 4 energy on your first turn isn't. I find I can't pull that off. Maybe other people can, but Miraidon turn 1 is generally doable, and you're doing 220. But obviously, there's a number of 330 HP basic EXs, so getting that 10 extra in a lot of cases, you don't want to go up 10 short. That's a bad thing. So I think Zapdos is important there. And then the Iron Bundle is important in a deck like this. There's just some decks I think where it works out importantly, so that you are either getting rid of that Pokemon you don't want to attack into, either because it's an evolve. It's like a Dragapult EX that you can't one shot. You get rid of that, send up something else you can knock out, whatever it is. So Iron Bundle, I think it ends up being an important card as well in a number of games.
Yeah, and then let's talk about Regidrago. I feel like there's not too much more to say about Miraidon.
No.
It's the third basic deck, right? So it has a lot of similarities. But then Regidrago, there's one in the top 4. There were 3 more in the top 8, which is 5 through 8. 3 of those were out of the 4 were Raging Bolt, and then there's a bunch. It was the most played deck. There's 35 on day 2, and so I think I want to talk about the attackers in that deck. That's always what like is interesting in Regidrago. I mean, there's different things, but so
Well, hang on before you do that. So Regidrago, almost 28% of the day 2 decks were Regidrago. Crazy. So I don't know how many. I'm pretty sure 28% of day 1 people weren't doing that. So I think they got a crazy good day 2 rate. I do want to say that. And then you're looking at just the placements are just crazy good too. 4, 5, 7, 8, 11, 13, 19, 23, 24, 26. It just did insanely good.
I guess so. I feel like there was like 3 decks that were hyped up the most: Gardevoir, Charizard, and Regidrago. Um, and like I feel like it was more so the other decks fell. I mean, I imagine it was played a decent chunk in day one, at least probably like 20%.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
it
imagine the
might
data
have
is
been.
probably out there somewhere, but like it did well, but I don't know. I feel like it certainly had the potential to win, and it did not, because it definitely like kind of struggles in the early game because you can't attack turn. I mean, you technically can, but you can't attack with Richard Duke or restart turn one. So the basic, I mean, Iron
Right.
Torrens EX isn't a fast deck, but Miraidon EX and Roaring Moon EX are very fast decks, and Raging Bolt as well here. I don't actually know who played who in Top Cut really, but um, yeah, Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, Miraidon, Roaring Moon EX, those decks are like very fast and outspeed Richard Draco V-Star. So I feel like
Yes.
and no one played Northern EX, which is kind of surprising to me that
Oh,
stops.
there's no. Wow, that person, if they did, someone did that got there, they might have won the event.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's so good. I mean, against Iron Throne, it's a little sketchy. You do need to get it in the discard. Obviously, that's like how the Pokemon works. But
Right.
you do have consistency issue. Well, if you can't use your abilities, then you are then each like Ultra Ball and whatever is really important. But you still probably can do that. But then the top list here, human fourth, had Giratina Giratina V-Star, Gudra V-Star, Hisuian Gudra, and then Hiram and two Dragapults. Um,
Yeah.
so and then generally, I think they played pretty similar to that. Generally, two Dragapults, Giratina. Did not all play Gudra, but a good chunk did. Also, Radiant Charizard was in a lot of the lists. The top list, a lot of the top lists didn't play any Radiant Pokemon. Two of the top four didn't play Radiant Pokemon, which is pretty surprising. Um, Pretty interesting as well. Like every list is playing an A spec. A specs are like just better than normal cards, but Radiant Pokemon aren't.
Right.
So I mean, they're better than normal cards, but they're not just objectively better. They're generally better, but it's not like they just do more damage than everything else.
Right. Well, because with these lists, right, are they all playing? No, I guess the average number was three Teal Mask Ogre Pawns. The top place list played four. So you're playing three or four Ogre Pawns, and you probably want to get them all in play, right? At least it seems like that's right, because you just want to be getting energies of play, and it's a great little draw there. And then you're probably starting Squawkabilly a lot of times. You have a Cleffa. You're getting some support Pokemon like that down, and a Mew possibly, and you'll need another Regidrago on the bench usually, right? Because you have
Well, you
to
don't play
evolve
all your ogre. You play like you certainly don't play four ogre pawns down. I don't know. I generally play
three,
two
two.
down. I think a lot of people play three down from what I've seen just on ladder. But you can run into bench space issues because you do need two Regidragos in play. And then you probably want Mew. And then the top list does run Cleffa. It does not run it doesn't run Hawlucha, which is kind of interesting. That was played in most of the lists, but
Right.
Hawlucha gets you some extra damage, allowing you to fix math in certain different ways, but not played here. And I guess it can cause issues. It's you can't attack with it, and it can it's just not. I don't know. I also don't love it in the deck because I find you can't do it just doesn't do enough a lot of the time, and it's just like kind of underwhelming or too hard to
Uh,
pull off.
the Hawlucha you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's there, right, to go with Kiram's attack, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes
you could go with Dragapult as well.
and
It has a
Dragapult
lot of
too.
more use cases than you'd expect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, when I play against Dragapult, I feel like I'm in good shape, and then there's been not a lot of games where all of a sudden then my opponent slaps down the Hawlucha, and they just take out all my attacking options, right, for the next turn, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing nothing now for a turn. So it can be very good. Um, and I don't know, they play Kiram, which I assume basically all the decks do. This top list doesn't have any way to get it out of play though. And I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
feel like
that's
it's not
the
like you
most
don't
common.
start it that commonly though. Like you have you have 10 other basics. Ow, I bit my tongue. So you have 10 other basics and also like I don't know. I mean, do most of us play ways to get out of play?
That's what I'm
They all play Prime
wondering.
Catcher. It'd be like Terror Scenario or Penny, but
Right.
probably not Penny. Oh,
Well, one
Thornton.
deck plays Thornton,
Yeah.
or Penny. Maybe maybe two decks do. I'm not sure, but basically they can't get out of play. Right, is how it looks to
I
me.
think more than that.
And it,
So point three would be one. So it would be
well, 0.03 or
point zero three. Yeah.
0.06.
So wait, what's point zero six?
Nothing. I take it.
Yeah.
Penny's
There's
0.03. Thornton is 0.09.
yeah. So and then Terrace Near is also point zero nine. So it would be 7 decks, which is like some, but assuming they only play one copy. So like some decks do have ways to get Cure out of play. It's not like that big of a deal. And then I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, your opponent can like boss trap it, but to buy themselves some time. But that's like kind of silly because most decks are more consistent than Regidrago, so that's mostly just buying you time, and then like they're probably not going to trap it there the entire game. And you do play Switch as well. And then it's not like a super important attacker that often, but when it is important, it's really important. But they'll probably
Right.
have to knock it out by then.
Hopefully, right. That's the thing. You can't attack with it if it's in play, if you can't get it out of play. So now it's a dangerous attacker, right? Because you do discard all your energy from your attacker, from your Regidrago V Star. And then can you attack the next turn? It's questionable, right? So it's a very critical decision when to use it at the right time. If you use it too early to wipe out an opponent's uh, attackers for a turn, which can happen, you might not attack for a couple turns yourself. So it gets to be a little odd that way.
Yeah. But I feel like there's not none of the lists run it doesn't look like Reggie. No, was it Raging Bolt? I don't think, which is kind of interesting. I think Raging Bolt EX is pretty good.
Mm.
It in Regidrago because it does allow you to hit uncapped damage. It's specifically good
Right.
against like Charizard EX and stuff. But you do have Giratina V-Star, which is played in pretty much all the lists. So might have been all the lists, I guess. But yeah, so that's what people have opted to play. You don't like lose as much energy, not even close. So you do less damage, but with the Giratina, but it's not that much less. So I mean, into the meta, Giratina is much better.
Yeah, I would say so. And as I'm looking here, as you mentioned Giratina, maybe like one person or something played the Giratina V, because otherwise I don't. They play like what, one canceling cologne. So if they thought Mimikyu was going to be a thing, they were going to struggle with that.
I guess you do have Mew EX, and you said there's one canceling clone, but you can recover it. So like it's awkward, but you can get through it. You potentially have Kira, probably not. I guess the deck playing Mimikyu would probably be Gardevoir, but um, yeah, I think
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of sketchy, but you can deal with it.
Yeah, and obviously the Giratina V is bad because you can start it, and then once again you can't get that out of play. In theory, you could evolve it, but then you don't actually have the energy to actually attack with the Giratina V Star. So
Yeah, I feel like
it is a
evolving
little.
doesn't like you're just in the same spot you were in before, but now you got I guess you got more HP, which I guess is better. I don't know.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't do that, right? Unless you played like I don't know. You probably just would never do that.
Yeah, you
So
could maybe you
um,
could play attack like Luminous Energy or something. And then you could attack with Giratina V and V Star.
well, the V Star attack you have to get 10 in the lost zone, which
Well, yeah, but you can attack with the V like the regular attack on the V
the
Star.
V right. Oh, with the V Star, right? Not the V Star attack, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no. So it makes sense not playing the Giratina V, and you do have the 4 energy switch, so getting the Mew set up is more doable than most decks, right? Because you potentially can power it up in one turn. Certainly, powering up in 2 turns shouldn't be a problem, if not one turn.
Yeah. But it's like not great. I mean, they can recover the Mimikyu, but I mean, anyway, whatever. So then the other deck in the top 8 was Reasonable Ogerpon. This deck is definitely a deck I'm not a massive fan of, if you know me. But yeah, you got. I mean, you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So let me take a look up there. I haven't looked at what this list is yet. So and it's another big basic deck, right? So that is kind of the theme of this Worlds, perhaps. Big basics. 4 of the top 8 decks were big basic decks, and the top 3 were. And then the rest were the rest all
It's Draco.
Regidrago?
Yeah, in the top 8.
Top 8. Yeah. And
There
there
was
was
the
the
ninth place, which was like a tiebreaker, which is not obviously in the top 8. The ninth is not, but it is in top cut. So that was
right.
Lugia Gaps, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Yeah. So look, it potentially there was a time when this was the deck, right? With the Raging Bolt when the Ogre Pond came out, so you can then accelerate energy to it. So Raging Bolt protect the multiplier at 70 per energy discard is very good. That's one of the scary things with Raging Bolt. I think the 70 multiplier, very, very good. And obviously they're playing what, 6 grass energies here? Is that typical? No, most play at least one more energy. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a
So
little low, but it doesn't matter that much. You have like times recovery and stuff you
oh
play.
wait, I
It's
was
like
looking at the wrong deck list here. So look, it hits hard, right? So it only takes
No,
two
yeah,
energies.
6 is pretty common. It's not like
Yeah, you're right. No, I was looking at the wrong thing, so I was wrong about that. So because I didn't see the right energies also.
oh yeah, we're looking at
Um,
Reggie Draco.
I was, yes. So which obviously is not the same deck at all. So look, it hits hard. You can attack and knock out anything turn one. A lot of the times going second, right? That's what it wants to do. And then it's a question between this and Miraidon, which deck can do that more consistently, right?
Yeah, and Roaring Moon EX.
And Roaring Moon EX, yeah. But again, yeah, I apologize for that. It's not on my brain. Even, I know it came in second. It's still hard for me to wrap my brain around that one. So Professor Sada's Vitality. I know you're kind of not a fan of that card, but
No,
it
it's
is.
very
I think
good. It's like Welder, where if you Welder was a very long time ago by now, but if you were playing Welder, it's really good. But then if you like
yeah.
your whole deck depends on it. So and same with Raging Bolt EX or any deck playing Sada's Vitality, you really rely on it. So if you miss it, you're like you can't do anything. So that's why it like scares me.
That's true. Look, you accelerate two energies. It goes to different Pokemon. It accelerates from the discard pile. So in a sense, maybe it's better than Welder. I mean, it's different. So, and it draws you three cards. So that's very very nice there. So you're getting those energies in play turn one, and because it's a big basic turbo deck, it plays Squawkabilly just one copy here, and the top deck, and yeah, basically they all play just one copy. And one's Pheasantipity. This is another deck. Pheasantipity helps out a lot of decks, and this is another one because you don't really. Well, you have your Ogerpons, right? That's your engine, but you have to have the grass energy in hand to do it. So getting a Pheasantipity into play is a big plus with these decks. So I do like it a lot. It just hits hard. It hits fast and it hits hard, and hopefully you can knock out 3 two-prize Pokemon and the game's over. That's what you're really trying to do. If you're up against a single prize deck, like when I played it, you match it to Ancient Box, it's a very unhappy thing because it's a relatively tanky single prize deck, and it's a lot of attacks. So I don't love it against single prize decks. But if you're thinking you're going into these stage 2 Charizards, Dragapult EXs, then you have the best chance of one-shotting them probably of any of these single prize decks. And you set up
I mean
fast
basic, right? Like big basic.
of a big basic
Well,
deck. Yeah.
but I think you're feeling like Roaring Moon also is about as good, but then you do damage yourself a ton, which is a really big issue against Dragapult.
Right. You put yourself down to 30 HP, and if Dragapult can gust up something, another two prizer into the active, take two prizes there, and knock out your your Roaring Moon, and then they can put 3 damage counters on your next Roaring Moon if there's another one on the bench.
Yes, that
So
could be a
so
very
if you
big
attack, you just lose the game at that point. That's your sixth prize when you knock yourself out with that. So look, it's a powerful deck. It's another Pokestop deck, which it is what it is. It's another. I'm looking at Pokemon Catcher again, so that's another theme. Coin flips are in, and this one's a Trekking Shoes deck, which probably they all play Trekking Shoes, right? Let me just take a look at the count. No, 2.3. So they did not all do that. And do they play Pokegear? This one does not play No, this one plays Pokegear as well.
I feel
So
like most play Pokegear.
So it's the basic deck without much of an engine, which means you're playing a bunch of Trekking Shoes and a bunch of Pokegear. And that's kind of how you're navigating things, which is why you play Pokestop as well. Obviously, Pokestop means you don't hit the Sada's Vitality with that. So you hopefully hit your Pokegear and then don't lose the Sada's Vitalities too quickly, right? That's kind of where you're hoping. But, obviously it's a very solid deck.
Yeah, it's quite strong. And I mean, the reason why it's good is from any board state, you can just knock out any Pokemon, which is really, really crazy. I mean, you can kind of do it with Roaring Moon EX, but it does have issues with that you're going down really low HP. So that's not great. But you do have the automatic switch. So I think they're pretty similar. Miraidon EX does have some similarities as well, being a big basic versus like Iron Thorn GX is very different. But yeah. So I think let's talk about Lugia now, though.
Right, which came in 9th, so it didn't make top 8, but did make top cut, like you said. And this was one of, to me, I was thinking this was maybe my number 4 deck when I was kind of going in. Certainly one of the top decks coming into the tournament. And it is the number 2 deck in terms of most played decks and most points earned in day 2. So over 13% share, which is which is pretty solid there. So it's obviously the thing with Lugia is it's very hit or miss. And I don't think either of us are fans of Lugia just because there's too many games where you don't get set up, right? And I think they didn't if you're watching the stream, they did not broadcast the 8-9 game. They didn't show it, which I would have been nice to do because that was an elimination game. But my understanding is I think they announced the game was over within about 10 minutes of the round starting.
Oh.
So so if that's true, assuming that was accurate, then Lugia just didn't set up and just got rolled, and that is the risk with Lugia.
Yeah, I don't know who was the eighth person. Like, if it was Iron Thorns, that would not end well. Lugia is really bad against Iron Thorns. You can play Canceling Clone, and then you're okay. You need
Yep.
to hit it, but you can if you just play one throughout the course of the entire game, pretty much any turn ever, you're like, I mean, you can't do it like turn like 8, but like somewhere in the first like few turns, you'll be fine. But I don't think any
Right.
of the Lugia players played Canceling Clone. I just want to check, but I'm assuming they didn't.
Let me
Yeah, it looks
take a
like they
look at
didn't.
the.
And so, but
So
then
did no one
this
play it?
no, and I don't think so. But then it
Okay.
does run a Lightning energy and a Legacy energy, of course, that's like really good for the deck. And it runs Raikou V this list, which is pretty interesting, and only one Chinchino. So and it has like Fezandipti EX, which is a really great addition as like an engine piece, and a bunch of different attackers. You got the Iron Hands EX, of course. You have the Lugia V Stars, you have Luminia
Right.
V, we see Iron Bundle. But then we also see the Blood and Ursaluna EX and Weird V, which are really good colorless attackers. And so there's a lot of different attackers for different scenarios. So even if you are against something really like it's really saying that you can't use your Lugia V-Star, the V-Star power summoning star, you can still use like Raikou V for only 2 energies, either a lightning or legacy, and then a jet, and you get that in the active, and start doing damage with that. So that's um, pretty interesting. Raikou V was not a card I was expecting to see in Lugia.
No, and I'm trying to take a quick look at see who he probably that might have been the only deck that played it. It's
Yeah, looks like it was.
0.06
Looks like it
percent.
was.
So that's and most of on your comment on the Chinchinos, most decks play
Is it
most decks play
2/2?
two Chinchino. Well, it's like it's slightly below 2 for Chinchinos, but it's only slightly above 1 for the Minchinos.
Well, yeah, but that's
Uh,
because they play a split of Minchinos. So,
yeah, I mean the other Minchino doesn't show. Oh yeah, I see it
yeah, no,
there. So
it's
yeah, so they
lower. They
play.
call for family one with lower HP.
Yeah, no, I see it there. So which makes sense. So I mean, a 2-2 line's what I would have expected. This one obviously did the best. Lugia was something I thought it could have done. It's a deck that's good into to a lot of this popular decks, right? So it is a better call, and like I said, it's a bit of a risk. So like, he gets to play a Jock in this deck, so which I think makes sense. Search for 2 evolution Pokemon. Not a lot of decks play that, so
I get. Well, do they? I feel like it's pretty
they
common.
they,
Well,
they
a
probably
lot of
do.
different decks, but like,
Other decks do.
oh
This is
yeah,
probably
yeah,
the
that's
only
true.
deck that probably does. Plays 4 Capturing Aroma, so more coin flips again, and another card I just hate because of the flippy nature. I'll play 4 Great Ball over 4 Capturing Aroma any day. I'm probably
Yeah,
wrong for
yeah.
that,
No,
but
capturing was like it's pretty good, especially in a deck here. Well, admittedly, there aren't a ton of evolutions you want, with only like one Cinccino, but still like Archeops, especially in the early game, is good. So like in turn one, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Like it does. There's a good coin flip, but like the bad isn't that bad. It's just like okay. So capturing was like really good in the early game in this deck.
yeah.
It just gets you something good all the time.
Yeah, well, your first turn, because either you're getting an Archeops to discard, hopefully, or you're getting your basics in play. After that, when you like have to get the Archeops to discard, it's the coin flip, and you have the 2 Mesa Gozas here, which makes sense again. But again, more coin flips. It's just that's the nature of this deck, and just a lot of coin flip cards. I don't know if that's common for these top decks having this many coin flips. I
Yeah,
would
I
say
feel like
probably not.
Mesa Goza, it's kind of a weird card. It's a card that is more it's like a counter stadium as well and helps like you do things.
Yeah,
The counter stadium is I think Jamming Tower. No, is it? No, Mesa Goza is the common one, but Jamming Tower is the one I generally see.
yeah.
You can ladder, but you just kind of need some stadiums as well, I guess, as counters and stuff. And just to help things out with certain situations. But Mesa Goza is nice. I feel like I don't know. I'm not a massive Lugia fan, but I know there are people who are big fans. I do like the different attackers. There's I don't know. There's a bunch of different attackers. So
Yeah, no, yeah, that yeah. I mean, it's obviously Archeops is just crazy once it's set up. And any box style deck I like where you have these different options, right? Iron Hands, Blood Moon or Soluna, Weirder V, which just smacks for crazy big damage once you're at the right point in the game and such. So um Raikou, which I guess is that like a mirror counter? Is that why it's in there? I mean,
It
there
could
are
be. It's just like I mean, you have Iron Hands EX as well, but it is just a solid Pokemon. Yeah, it's quite good for the mirror. I mean, I think you like Entei a lot, right? So it's like
I
Entei
do.
but it's lightning.
And and obviously I'm looking at the Lumion V in this list, and you have Squawkabilly EX another list. So this list plays Squawkabilly too, of
Yeah.
course. So it's just it's a good attacker. Yeah, I mean obviously they could play Entei V. Wait, did that rotate? No, that's in format still, right?
Yeah,
So
but you have lightning energies for in hand, so
no, I get it. You have the legacy, you could, but Raikou V is I think you'd rather have the lightning attacker than the fire attacker anyway.
yeah.
Right now, so a good deck, a solid list, and
Yeah. I
one
mean,
earthen
dude,
vessel. I don't know
uh
if that's common because you only they
um
play one basic
I
energy.
mean,
I
it's
was just
there to discard mostly, I think, because you struggle to
okay.
discard cards from your hand. You have Ultra Ball, and then you have the
Okay.
researches, and then Squawkabilly. But Squawkabilly you can't use turn two, and then research you can't use if you've already played a supporter. So I think that's like a big reason why Earthen Vessel's in the deck, and it does help things out a bit.
Yeah, no, that's true. You have the four ultra balls and the one earthen vessel. Most decks don't play it, but some do. Like a third of the deck. Well, yeah, about a third of the decks played it, I guess, based on they probably just played one copy mostly. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So what other decks should we talk about? Should we talk about Charizard and Gardevoir now? I think we've talked about most of the we're almost done, but we've talked about the top decks, which are not Charizard and Gardevoir, which is interesting.
yeah. I mean, do we want to? I mean, do we want to mention control at all, or we just want to? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll pull up let's talk about real quick Pidgeot control and then Snorlax. Was it highest Snorlax? Okay, yeah, it
Okay,
was.
you're doing Snorlax first.
Yeah, I'll do Snorlax. So it's nothing too crazy. It does run Secret Box, I believe, the highest list, which is like kind of fun. But it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Yeah, four counter catchers, four Snorlaxes, some Ogre Ponds and
Yeah,
Mimikyus, Rotom V, Pidgeot V. Yeah, this deck is it's a solid deck. It's not anything insane. But I mean, it's quite good. It does due to certain like rules, it's not super great. And then of course it does depend on the meta. It's really bad against Iron Thorns as well. That's a terrible matchup. So I mean, you do have the Mimikyus, which are good. So I guess it's not like the worst matchup if you're able to get those. So it's okay. I'm not super familiar with the matchup to be
right.
honest.
Well, you
But
have yeah,
it's
well, you have three Pokemon that can't deal with the Mimikyu and your Cornerstone Mask
well
Ogerpon,
no,
right?
but no, because they don't have their ability. It turns off
Oh,
this
their
one.
abilities. Okay, their
Yeah,
ability.
I've
You're
definitely heard
right.
people
Okay,
like get confused about that. I
you're
think
right.
someone was saying Ting Lu countered Iron Thorns, and then they said like, oh wait, it doesn't because it's like really weird. But
Oh,
I
the
mean, it
whole
doesn't matter
sequence of the
anyway because you
interaction.
just still one shot
Yeah,
them anyway. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, you have Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX, which isn't so good, but Mimikyu is. But then you really struggle to set up in the early game
yeah.
or really ever because Rotom V is very important. But whatever. And then the other deck is a Pidgeot EX list. It does not run Luxor EX. It does run the new Genesect, which turns off Ace Specs, and it has a few things. It's nothing too crazy here, honestly. I'd say it's pretty tame for like a Pidgeot control list, but it is still kind of interesting. And
Yeah. Well, I just want to say because I think the Pidgeot control is more interesting than the Snorlax control, and one of the things that's happened with the evolution of these decks is they are attacking decks too, right? They play blood. There are two people. They both play Blood Moon, Ursa Luna. The other person's list I think is more interesting. They even play Luxray with Reversal Energy.
oh yeah, I've
And
never been a big fan of that. I mean, I know some people really like it, but I always find it kind of sketchy.
well, here's the reason I like their list. They play Milotic in the other
They do
one,
play Milotic. That's it's
so
it's the
I
best card
give
in the
them
game,
props for that.
highest win rate card. Um, I don't think it's still. I don't know if it still is, but it was the highest win rate card in the game at a time. For cards that were played above like 100 times or something. Anyway, so yeah, but control is. I mean, you know it or you don't know it, but it doesn't really matter. So let's talk about Gardevoir. Wait, no. Let's talk about Charizard. Human
Okay,
10th. This was played. And there are some different lists. There are some weird lists. The 10th place list here runs
which is Tord's list, by the
yeah,
way.
it runs a 2-1-2 Charizard, but then a 2-1-2 Pidgeot. So it runs a Pidgeotto, which I have not seen in quite a while. Obviously, it's played some. It's played here. And then it runs Bibarel, Rabsca instead of Manaphy, which is kind of interesting, and Squilvet. We don't see any Dusknoirs.
Yeah.
in this list or whatever, any part of that line. We see Team Evolution, so
Right.
that is why the Pidgeotto is there. It's nothing too crazy. Rapska is not common, and Pidgeotto is not common, but nothing too crazy going on here.
I mean, kind of built to counter things, right? The stage one for both the Charmeleon and the Pidgeotto, and only a 2-1-2 line for Charizard. So he's worried about TM devolution. The Rapska is obviously what you need for something. It's a stage one, right? That's the downside. But once it's set up, it is super good there. And, just all, a good, kind of worrying about different situations with this build. A little more teched out than your typical Charizard list, I would say.
I guess, but I suppose so. But then it's cutting off on things like Dusknoir and Pekarine, like the new cards that allow you to
Right.
reach a higher ceiling. I feel like this stack it has like counters that are defensive counters. When people are talking about counters, generally they're saying things like Kyurem or I can't think of anything else, but Kyurem. I can't think of anything else in the standard, but like JPNV or something. Oh,
Right.
that's the
No, it's a
standard, but
defensive
it's
list, and he plays a Thornton in the list too, which you're not necessarily expecting.
yeah.
So,
I mean, Thorn's like just a solid card in general for different decks. You could put it in. I mean, it's good in control, but specifically, but it allows you to do some pretty cool options just in general.
yeah, you can get like your Lumineon V, you can get your Radiant Charizard in, or get a Charizard into play to evolve immediately into a Charizard. I mean, the Charmander to evolve Charizard EX. So it brings good things to the deck. And back in the days, I felt like 6 energies was always a little sketchy. I was nervous about that, but now they're playing fire energies in the top two lists. So
Yeah, and then there's a
uh,
double turbo in the other one. I don't know if there's a double turbo there's a double turbo in the highest placing list. Don't know if it is in the other ones, but
yeah, the other one, the number two list also has one double turbo.
yeah. So yeah, 5 is kind of low. There are 2 super odds, but that's like not. I don't know. I find it kind of. It's not that big of a deal. There's only like a few Charizards, and so it's not as important, but it's still kind of sketchy. And then Gardevoir here. Gardevoir is another deck that people are considering very good. Honestly, this list isn't anything too crazy. It's pretty straightforward.
Now there is the Bayonet list too at the bottom.
Yes, there's
Don't
the
don't
Baynet
forget,
list, which was
which is a Gardevoir list.
that is true. Where is it? You know.
It's second from the bottom on the Limitless list.
Okay,
If
okay,
you're looking at all the decks, they came in 67th place. If you're
okay.
looking the other way.
So yeah, it has Baynet EX. It has the single prize Baynet, which is kind of fun. I don't think it's anything too great. Like it's if you know Gardevoir Baynet, it's pretty much like Gardevoir Baynet, but it's like good. You got item lock, right? So everyone's favorite. Um, but
Yes.
you think I think like most of the Gardevoir lists seem pretty normal. Um, yeah, we see in terms of attackers, Mimikyu is nice. It was not in this highest placing list. This is pretty normal. You got the 2 Monkey Doors. You got a Drifloon, Cresselia,
Right.
Screamtail, Fluttermane, Klefki, and we do see Radiant Greninja and Manaphy here in the list. That's commonly played. I think there's a time when people are kind of dropping that, but it's very good, right? So Radiant Greninja isn't necessarily in most of the lists, but I do believe it is good still.
It is. I mean, look, if you think like controls a thing, obviously you can attack with every other card in your deck. So
Yeah. Oh,
that's a
not
reason not.
Manaphy. Oh, well, yeah,
Uh,
it depends
that's
which
true.
which one.
You're correct. You're correct. Sorry about that. So the top from listed Cresselia, I was just taking a look at the detail breakdown. Most lists do not play that though. I find the Cresselia when to use it's very situational. So it's not
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
the biggest
true.
fan of it.
I mean, it's good against Dragapult, and it can be good against there's a lot of situations where like it doesn't heal a ton, but it heals some. And then with
Yeah.
the Monkey Doors, you can be healing a decent chunk and really throw your opponent off. For example, against I guess it's not that good against Iron Thorns, but it's okay. It can lead to some pretty funny things. Honestly, the Gardevoir versus EX versus Iron Thorns matchup is really interesting. It's one of the more interesting matchups
Mhm.
in the game, especially for the Gardevoir player because you need to navigate things very carefully. But then you also need to dodge Lost Cities. Iron Thorns is trying to Lost City things that are important and well, like the Klefkis and the Fluttermanes, Monkey Doors can cause problems. There's a lot of stuff going on in that matchup.
Right. I mean, to me, the big thing right now with Gardevoir is between Klefki, Fluttermane, and Spiritomb. What are you playing? Right. That's a big decision, and you see a split between these different decks. It looks like between what they want to do, what they
Yeah.
thought they needed to
Hmm.
battle to deal with. So I mean, because that's obviously a big decision that impacts your games a lot. What can you deal with? Plays an enhanced hammer here, which probably most of them do. I think no, most of them don't actually. Okay.
Yeah. Enhanced Hammer's like solid. I mean, It's just that's like a pure tech card. Obviously, it just countering certain things. I'm not exactly sure what they're specifically for, if there's a specific use, or it's just a good card though. But yeah,
Yeah. So Gardevoir doing Gardevoir things, and I think I saw at least one Gardevoir player get a prize penalty for taking too long, and that's Gardevoir doing its Gardevoir stuff.
the classic.
E- e- Exactly. The other thing, which was fun to see, in a silly sense, at the final game, we saw the judge came in and shuffled in for the Iron Thorns player. Got tired of sitting there during the mulligans, which is also a thing with the Iron Thorns
Yeah, I
deck.
didn't know that was a thing that the judge could like say, "Oh, you're taking too many mulligans," but that's like kind of funny. And so they can like essentially guarantee no mulligan. It's kind of funny, but um, yeah. So anyway, the World Championships I think were pretty interesting. We didn't talk about the like announcements. We might talk about those some. We saw a little about Pocket, though that wasn't that much. There wasn't really much
Right.
new information. Then there was some stuff about the trainers Pokemon, which are pretty cool, I guess. I mean, we didn't see much. I think there's gonna be a bunch of stuff. Like right now, there's nothing too crazy to see, but I do believe in the future we're gonna see some pretty cool things with the trainers Pokemon. Kind of like with Apex, where they jazzed them up a bunch. But we'll see. I'm excited to hear more info about that. But right now, we don't have enough to talk about with that. So maybe we'll talk about that later, though.
Yeah, I think we will as things comes out. What level of interaction there are. Just putting the trainer's name on an image isn't exciting in itself, but making deck what makes the deck building more interesting, and we see some of that already. So we'll get more of that. My summary for the worlds, a bit of a surprise. Obviously, didn't expect Iron Thorns, and certainly didn't expect Mariah. I mean, Roaring Moon in the final, but a very nice deck diversity, I think. So, which has kind of been the way the format's been for a while. There's been a lot of things that can compete, and we saw it once again. And that's just a really good, healthy place for the meta. And whatever criticisms you want to make of Pokemon, I think the game designers are doing a good job, all in all, that we have a healthy meta right now.
Yeah. Also, I've heard people like complain about the big basics, but then people were complaining about like Charizard before, which is like not a big basic. Like I don't know. People just like complain about everything. But no, the World Championships they're fun. Let's just have a good time. Just like enjoying it. It's something that you enjoy not competing in. A lot of people get if you're playing in a tournament, you're like all locked in and you're not necessarily having as much fun. At least in my experience, I know a lot of people do enjoy tournaments a lot, but this is something that people can enjoy watching, and I think is really cool. There's a lot of stuff going on with the whole Pokemon community, not just the TCG. But I'm looking forward to seeing what we're gonna hear about with the new announcements, but then also with what the meta's gonna do. There's a new set coming in like a month, which is not that long from now. So I'm really excited for that. But we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Check us out on YouTube with the channel is 10 types in uncommon fossil, and you can if you have comments, leave them on the channel. That's the best place for us to see them. If you want one person to see them, if they're it's a comment about what one person said, leave it on that channel. So they're more likely to see it. But then also you can check us out on podcasting platforms like Spotify and stuff. I don't know, but we hope you enjoyed it, and we're excited to see you in the next episode.
Take care.